You've likely been hearing more and more about Salesforce. Perhaps you recently saw the Salesforce car in the Indianapolis 500, or perhaps you've seen one of the many Salesforce towers popping up in various skylines across the globe. To better understand what Salesforce is, we'll first look at the history of Salesforce. We'll then go into why you should care what Salesforce is as we discuss the various Salesforce career paths. Now, Salesforce really excels in the entire life cycle of a business-to-business relationship. And that starts out with the marketing cloud, where you attract the attention of potential customers. That progresses into the sales cloud, where you try to attain those customers and close deals. And then into the service cloud, where you try to retain those customers. So Salesforce started out in 1999 as a customer relationship management platform, but has now grown into a huge customizable platform. And Salesforce has become wildly successful. As a matter of fact, 97 out of the 100 largest companies in the world use Salesforce as customers. It has reached the point today where Salesforce can be found in every conceivable vertical and industry known to mankind. So speaking about being in all verticals and industries, if you go to Salesforce's own website, you see that they are also trying to help explain what exactly Salesforce is. And I'll link to this in this lecture. Just look for the link down below. And on the What is Salesforce page, if you scroll down beyond watching the demos, it gives you details around the 150,000 companies that use Salesforce, and they provide a lot of demos that you can check out. But then as well, if you keep scrolling, and as I mentioned previously, Salesforce excels with marketing, sales, and service as you attract, attain, and retain customers. But then as well, it's getting into the Commerce Cloud, also provides communities. One of the recent acquisitions by Salesforce was a company known as Quip that does a lot around creating, editing, discussing, and organizing your team's work all in one place. And as well, they have information around the different industries that Salesforce is now involved in. So if you click on See All, here's the different industry-specific solutions that are being built out now. And those range from banking to communications, travel and hospitality, wealth management. And so you can just simply select one of these and get further details or identify what you're interested in, and you can see different solutions around these different industries and verticals. All right, so to figure out where we sit today with the demand for Salesforce skills, I want to look back somewhat. This is an article from CIO.com from back in 2017, and this discussed how in-demand Salesforce was across all job skills. So this tied into a report from a company or organization known as Burning Glass, and they looked at their proprietary database of 100 million job postings across over 40,000 job sites, and found more than 300,000 job postings between July of 2015 and June of 2016 that called for Salesforce skills. Now, I know that this is maybe the ancient past, but I'm here to tell you, and we'll look at some more recent numbers, that this job skills shortage has only intensified. The need for Salesforce professionals has only increased. But at the time of the writing of this particular article, it put Salesforce in the 7th most in-demand software skill across all those job postings. The thing to wrap your mind around is that this is bringing them up from the 18th spot just 4 years ago. So 4 years prior to 2017 would be back in 2013. Salesforce was the 18th most in-demand job skill, and then in 2017, or maybe even back in June of 2016, it was the 7th most in-demand IT skill. So even then, it was putting demand for Salesforce skills ahead of such IT stalwarts such as Python, .NET, and C++. And it's putting it more in line with commonly used applications such as Adobe Photoshop. So if you follow this link for the report from Burning Glass, you'll notice that this takes you to, and I will link to all this as well and provide this for you, but let me pull this up. This is a PDF that link takes you to, and I'll link to all these resources in the resources section of this lecture. The main point and purpose of creating this course even is because you need to make an informed decision. So I'm trying to provide you adequate resources so you can do your own investigation. It's one thing for me to say, oh, you should learn Salesforce, and you can always think, oh, he's saying that because he teaches Salesforce and he sells Salesforce training. All that is very true, but the reason that I am in this space and have chosen to teach Salesforce is because of this intense shortage that I see. And I see that the greatest threat to Salesforce's future dominance and their greatest threat is not a competitor, but it's a lack of talent. And it will be easy at some point for companies to decide we're not going to go with Salesforce because there's not enough people to implement it. So we're going to go with Java or .NET, because you can throw a rock and hit 5 .NET professionals on any street corner, basically. So it's all about supply and demand. And so this is the actual report that all that information was based upon, and it's also referencing other IDC white papers. And so I want to encourage you to look through this and take away from this your own understanding as to, why I mentioned that Salesforce is a good career path. Now, as we looked at, this is somewhat dated material from 2016 and 2017. So I want to also show you some other resources that are more current in subsequent lessons in this course. But be sure and check out this Burning Glass report, and it gives you a lot of numbers around postings in 2012 versus postings in the last 12 months, relative growth since 2012 compared to all jobs. And these are just insane numbers as far as the exponential number of times faster that this job growth is happening compared to all other jobs. It also gives you average salaries at that time. I'll go more into average salaries later in this course as well. Top 10 occupations requesting Salesforce. There's so many golden nuggets here of information and ideas of different paths. And I'll be going into more of these paths specific as well to help you decide which path fits best for you given your background and your interests and your abilities. And so this is a 10-page report, highly valuable, but let me downsize this and get back into that previous screen. So the CIO article is very helpful, and there's some related videos as well, and some advertising I might add. But in the next lecture, I'll show you the updated numbers around what this means as far as the skill shortage, so that we're looking at something that is more current to look at the job outlook and where we're getting that number of the 3.3 million jobs coming to the Salesforce ecosystem. All right, so let's talk about the famous numbers being tossed around and touted in recent press releases. And this has to do with the 3.3 million jobs coming in the Salesforce ecosystem. And this is an article that I found on Medium, and this is written by Lisa Tenorio. And she's talking about how Salesforce is the world's #1 CRM platform, which is customer relationship management. And according to a recent IDC study, the forecast for new jobs demanding Salesforce skills shows a huge increase from last year. So let me show you this IDC study as well. I'm going to open that in a new tab. And once again, I will link to these in this lecture. And here's the underlying IDC white paper. And this is showing from between 2016 to 2022 and released in October of 2017. So it is more current, but even this is still pretty dated. I'd love to see an update to these numbers. But in this white paper, it gives the details and the executive summary and the idea behind the methodology used, as well as the different regions and economic benefit to the Salesforce ecosystem. Now, I'll leave it to you to dive as deep as you want into this IDC report and find, why to either believe that, yes, Salesforce is a great idea for a career, or you can find, negative statistics can tell any story that you want. But if you look at this report with just an unbiased mindset, either just neutral, neither pro or con, you'll see that there's tremendous amount of growth. And this is just typical what this looks like when you're dealing with Salesforce. There's just an uptick. Everything's on an upward swing. And I'll show you more and more of these types of reports and graphs and resources. But here's another one. Not quite a hockey stick incline, but it's definitely steep enough that you wouldn't want this incline to be your own driveway, for example. But I digress. And so, as you can tell, this is really for you numbers people and those looking to really look at, not so much where Salesforce has been or even where Salesforce is today, but where's it going to be 5 years from now? And that's what this report is about, is trying to estimate as best as possible where things are heading and where the growth is. And I want to help you chart your own path into a cloud career throughout the duration and remainder of this course. And so beyond the underlying report, and once again, I'll link to that, there's this nice infographic, and this is basically condensing down this big long report into a visual to show some of the numbers related to the Salesforce economy. And what I would like to do here in this lesson is talk about what the Salesforce economy is and what the Salesforce ecosystem is. And this number of 3.3 million jobs being created by 2022, that is across the entire ecosystem of Salesforce. So when we talk about the Salesforce ecosystem, you can condense that down into 3 different primary categories, and I'll have lessons for each around these 3 different categories. The first would be jobs working for Salesforce themselves. The second would be jobs created for Salesforce customers, those that subscribe to the Salesforce platform and use it to run their own business. And third would be Salesforce partner companies. These would be implementation experts, consultant companies, independent software vendors, etc. So in the next lessons, I'll be talking about those 3 different categories, and we'll get more familiar with what encompasses the Salesforce economy and the Salesforce ecosystem. All right, so let's discuss a little bit about working for Salesforce themselves. And so I've got a list here from the Fortune 100 Best Places to Work list. This is 100 Best Companies to Work for 2018. You see here in this particular tab. And number 1 on the list is Salesforce. They get a lot of accolades as far as being a great company to work for and to work at. And as far as different locations for some of their physical locations, if you go to the About Us page on Salesforce.com, and hover over this link here, you can see under corporate, there's a link for global offices. And this will give you ideas around the different locations where they have a physical presence. And they're headquartered in San Francisco at the Salesforce Tower. And that is, I think, the second largest building west of the Mississippi River in the United States. A huge building that has reshaped the San Francisco skyline. And then in addition, there's some pretty large presences for Salesforce in these different cities in the U.S., such as Atlanta. I know a lot of students come from Atlanta that connect with me, and I've got several of my boot camp that are from Atlanta region as well. I see a lot from Boston, and really any of these areas. I see a lot of students in these areas. A lot of these are Salesforce employees that do take my courses, because if you're a Salesforce employee, oftentimes you need to get 1 or multiple certifications very quickly depending on your role. Indianapolis, Indiana, that originates from the ExactTarget acquisition as part of the Marketing Cloud. ExactTarget has to do with business to consumer marketing. And as well, there's a Salesforce Tower in New York, New York at the Avenue of the Americas. And then there's a few other locations here. And then we get into Canada, and then Latin America, Caribbean headquarters, and then we get into Europe, Middle East, and Africa as well. This is a global company, and I have students in close to 160 countries that I've taught on the Salesforce platform. And I've seen a lot of students come from a lot of different locations, a lot of interaction with those in Ireland, in the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Italy, Switzerland, Sweden, a lot from the UK as well. There's very much a large and growing presence. Salesforce is investing a lot in the United Kingdom, and there's a lot of partner companies there as well. And then in the Middle East, have a location in Israel and Tel Aviv. Then in Africa, have a location in Morocco. And then Asia Pacific, location in Singapore. And then also locations in Australia, both Sydney and Melbourne, as well as New Zealand. And I've got several boot camp students and students in general that originate from Australia. One of my boot campers had an opportunity to present at the Melbourne location of the Australia office there. And then as well, of course, China is represented, India as well. I think India is my second largest student base. About 10% of my students originate from India. And then finally, Japan and Korea. So if you are, anywhere near one of the Salesforce global offices, that is a great opportunity to just actually work for Salesforce themselves. And then as well, under About Us is this link for careers. This gives you an idea of the different jobs that are available with Salesforce, you can watch that video that they have linked there. And then as well, it's interesting that Salesforce uses Workday for their job listings, but I digress. Workday is an up-and-coming cloud platform around HR-related functionality. So as you can see, there's many different categories and locations that these jobs fall under. So depending on your background, you may be able to find a way into the Salesforce ecosystem working for Salesforce themselves. So I do encourage you to look at these different resources. And then next, we're going to look at some of Salesforce's customers and how to find out who Salesforce's customers are and what types of jobs they may be hiring for in the next lesson. All right, so now we're going to talk about working for a Salesforce customer company. We previously looked at ways of finding jobs with Salesforce in the different global locations around the world. And now, as far as relating to or trying to figure out who are Salesforce's customers, a lot can be gleaned from Salesforce's quarterly financial updates or their quarterly reports. And this is a pretty long document that gives a lot of data. And here's some of the different things I was pointing to previously. Here's the #1 Fortune 100 best companies to work for and some other accolades that Salesforce has had. #1 for the Future 50. Here's an artist rendering of what is now the Salesforce Tower that's reshaping the skyline in San Francisco. And then here's some different notes. I'm not going to go through all this, but I wanted to find a specific page. There's a lot of data here, a lot of highlights, but a few things that will be good for you to note is the revenue by region. You can see Americas versus EMEA versus APAC, and how the large majority of revenue for this Q1 of fiscal year 19 came in the Americas, but you see great growth not only in the Americas of 19%, but also in EMEA and APAC, 48% and 34% year-to-year revenue comparisons respectively. So you're seeing great growth in those regions. And then if we continue onward though, when you talk about who are Salesforce's customers, and this is a great graph here to just kind of ponder before we get into the next slide, is this the trajectory of Salesforce as the #1 CRM in the world, and they are just blowing away the field, which includes Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, and Adobe. These look like flatline death, and this one is definitely just ramping upwards here. So they're just lapping the field and just trouncing the competition. But this is what I really want to talk about in this particular lesson or discussion, is that 97% of the Fortune 100 companies are Salesforce customers. So one way to figure out who are some of Salesforce's customers is just look at the Fortune 100 list and throw a dart at it. And there's a 97% chance you're going to land on a Salesforce customer. Or if you would like, you could have the Fortune 500 list, throw a dart at it, and there's an 83% chance that you're going to land on a Salesforce customer. So just looking at those lists, at the Fortune 100 or 500 list, that will give you a great idea as to some of Salesforce's customers. Then beyond that, other resources you can use would be on Salesforce's own website. And I will link to these in the resources section of this lesson under customer success. There are examples for both the enterprise and for small business. So this just gives you a list of different companies that use Salesforce and some of their success stories. And you can sort A to Z, or most popular, or newest, or filter by Success Cloud, or by products or industry, etc. And so, for example, you can just go down the list and see some of these companies such as ADP and Aldo and Activision. I mentioned as well you can filter by newest. So if you want to see some of the latest and greatest success stories, you can just filter the stories by that. This will enable you to, in essence, target specific companies that you would like to potentially work for, target for a Salesforce job. And you may find specific companies that are geographically located near you, or companies that you've thought that you would like to work for. I know, for example, Schneider Electric has a large presence near where I live in the Nashville, Tennessee area, and uses Salesforce, as well Farmers Insurance. And I know as well, just from personal experience, I mean, just be aware of your surroundings as well, and you'll see Salesforce. I went into a CarMax location to look at a car, and they were using Salesforce to enter in my information. I went to my bank. My local bank was using Salesforce as well. And so you can just sort by the different levels of business size, lower market, mid-market, upper mid-market. But the main idea here is that you can see even examples of small businesses as well that use Salesforce, and you can learn more about these companies in order to find and figure out who some of these 150,000 Salesforce customers are. I also want to show you, as it relates to customer success, this featured groups tab at success.salesforce.com. This is part of the Salesforce Trailblazer community, and there are, under customer success resources, if you click on all customer success resources, there's these different groups. For example, this Success Cloud group contains, at the time of this recording, 14,792 members, of which you can usually drill through and look at who those people are and who they work with or who they work for, and get an idea as to Salesforce's customers. And then as well, you have all these different groups around all these different products and offerings. And then additionally, you can also look at student groups, and this is also another helpful resource around student group resources or by region, and then user groups by region. I recently spoke at the Nashville user group in Tennessee. And so, for example, you just find your state and your location, and I'm just going to drill down to Tennessee for an example, and you see the different user groups located in this particular state that I'm in, and there's multiple user groups, and some are specific to like women in tech or user groups, or Pardot user groups, or specific cities, such as Nashville has 764 members. And so if we click into that, you can see some of the recent posts and some of the members as well. And if you log in, you can see more information around these people. Now, we'll be going more into sign up for a free Salesforce account later, but if you do have an account already, you can log in and then request to join some of these groups. And so now I'm logged in with my own Salesforce account, and here's the Nashville user group, for instance. So once you're inside of a group, or you're a member of a group, and I believe I'm a member of this group, and I am, you can see some of the conversation around here. And so let me just show you the members of the Nashville user group. And here you've got different people listed, and it signifies if they're a customer, and then as well who they work for. So the main takeaway is you can leverage these groups in the success community to find people and companies in order to start making connections, or to follow through from here into LinkedIn perhaps, to make connections and start building your own list of target accounts that you want to try to get into to try and land a job with. You can go to their websites and see if they're hiring, and just follow the trail there as far as figuring out what sort of Salesforce products they use, what sort of jobs they have, by seeing who is already in the building or inside the organization and what job titles they're holding. And over time, you can start to really build out an idea of who the players are in the Salesforce industry inside of wherever you're located at. And so this tip can give you, strategic advantage. So that's, once again, that's in the Trailblazer community. And if you just go under featured groups tab, and I'll link to that. So we've got the customer success resources, we've got the student groups, we've got the user groups by region, and then we've also got nonprofit user groups, affinity user groups. There's just groups upon groups upon groups. And then as well, going back to the customer success resources, I want to show you something around customer success in YouTube. So Salesforce has a customer success stories playlist on YouTube as well, with 79 videos here. So you can go through and review these as well. And some of the customer success stories include Shazam, Farmers, Amazon Web Services, Fitbit, etc. I'll link to this playlist as well. And so the idea behind working for a Salesforce customer is that's your best chance of finding companies that have in-house talent to implement or manage their Salesforce instance. And so there's likely going to be jobs on the Salesforce platform inside of these companies that you find here in this list. And those may be administrator jobs, or developers, consultant, project managers, business analysts, sales managers, support managers, etc. So now that we've looked at options and ideas around working for Salesforce or Salesforce customer companies, we're going to round out what the Salesforce ecosystem is by looking at Salesforce partner companies, figuring out who those partner companies are and what makes them tick as well, and how to make yourself more marketable to them. So we've talked about working for Salesforce or working for a Salesforce customer company, and now it's time to talk about working for a Salesforce partner company. Now, partner companies are either known as independent software vendors that create software that's built on top of the Salesforce platform, or part of this group known as global consulting partners. Now, I am on the App Exchange, which is Salesforce's own app store. And one of the links that is available has to do with the different partner companies that implement Salesforce solutions for customers. So many times these Salesforce customer companies will use an implementation company or consulting partner in order to implement their Salesforce solution. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of these partners. Now, I've filtered this by top partners. That's the default filtering on the partner page here, and I will link to this in the resource section of this lecture. But you can also look at partners by region and even by language as well. And then if you notice here on this filter designations, there's these designations as far as a registered partner, and that's kind of the entry point for partner companies. I'm actually a registered partner. The next step up would be a silver partner, and then gold, and then platinum, and then from there, I guess the next level above platinum is global strategic. Now, I'm pointing out these different levels because these different designations are very important to these partner companies. I'm going to apply the filter and show silver partners. Now, one statement that probably is true with these partner companies is that any registered partner has aspirations of reaching silver partner status as far as partner companies go. And then those in the silver ranks have aspirations of reaching gold level. And then those in the gold dream of becoming platinum partners. Now, the way that that is figured has to do with a scoring system that Salesforce uses in their partner program. And this is on my own website here, and I'll link to this as well. Or you can just Google Mike Wheeler charting your path and you will pull this up. This is an article that I wrote based on publicly available information that Salesforce provides on how they score their partners. And this is the equation. There's three primary buckets. There's annual contract value, there's expertise, and then there's customer success around specializations, customer satisfaction scores, and customer stories that their customers provide. This middle bucket here of expertise, which this is 35% of the equation as far as how these partner companies are scored, have to do specifically with certifications, and then the growth in the number of certified consultants. And then as well, there's even some points that partner companies can score via Trailhead. Now, the certifications is the primary means of which Salesforce partner companies can go from silver to gold to platinum outside of annual contract value or increasing their revenue numbers. One thing that's more readily in their control is stockpiling consultants and professionals that have specific certifications. Now, all certifications are not created equal. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about this, but leave it to you to read up more and understand the implications of this. Now, I've got this diagram here from this table, and it shows the different points that can be attained. This is that expertise bucket. This corresponds with this here. Expertise is in the middle. We got ACV, or annual contract value, on the left, and customer success on the right. My idea here with this video is just to explain what you're looking at here and make sense of all this data. So we got ACV over here, expertise, and then customer success. So I've got 5 points of interest in the expertise area, and I have more details around each. The architect certifications, you can attain 50 points maximum for a partner company. Now notice this. Partner companies, they can attain up to 200 points through consultant certifications. So if there's an area that Salesforce partners can stockpile points in the equation of how they are ranked, it's through the consultant certifications. That is massively huge, but not readily known. And so I want to make this abundantly clear, is that the biggest area in this whole entire equation, other than current sourced ACV of 300 points of the total of 1,000. If you add this up, this should equal 1,000. So 30%, or 300 out of 1,000, is the current sourced annual contract value. And then there's this other things here. So 45%, and that's what corresponds with this number here of the 45%. But then in the expertise, the 35%, how that is figured out is these numbers here, the 50, the 200, the 50, and the 200. But notice this right here, the consultant certifications, 200 points. This is an area that is relatively easy for partner companies to stockpile points to reach their next level. So I'm not going to just rehash all of this, but I've got links around all of these different certifications, and it takes you to Salesforce's own site with information on each of the certifications that they have available now. And then as well, I've got some links to some of my courses as well. I also provide information around how the trailhead points work here in this comment down below. And it's kind of wordy and detailed, so I'm not going to take the time to try and explain all that, but feel free to jump in the conversation here if you have any questions. I've got links to all the different certifications, and I also have links to where I'm pulling these numbers from, and that's from Salesforce's own partner program. And so visit that in the links as well. So the main thing to take away is that one highly valuable path you can go down and make you marketable to specifically partner companies, which once again would be these companies listed here on the App Exchange. I'll link to that as well, would be by attaining the consultant certifications. Now, in order to get the consultant certifications, whether it's Sales Cloud Consultant or Service Cloud Consultant, you have to first pass the admin certification. And I do have courses for all of the above. And that's why I've strategically elected to create the courses that I have, is because of this. I don't just randomly select which course I want to create next. I try to be strategic in the courses that I create as to make you as marketable and as employable as possible. And so these partner companies, make no mistake, will be more interested in you if you come through their doors. And what's accompanying you is not only some experience, but especially if you have one or multiple certifications, especially if those are consultant certifications, because it is almost like you have a certain number above your head while you're interviewing, and the person that's interviewing you, if they're a decision maker or someone that is in a position to know how the scoring system works, will be thinking about how many points you are adding to their goal of reaching these different levels between silver, gold, platinum, and global strategic partner. And so just like how you are trying to progress your career and you're investigating Salesforce as a way of doing that, these Salesforce partner companies are trying to advance their own companies and raise through the ranks, because the higher they go from silver to gold to platinum, the larger projects they have a chance of bidding on and winning, and Salesforce will send them more and more leads that are potential projects that they can implement that get into the millions of dollars. And so follow the money, think about this logically, check out my article here. There's a lot of nuggets of information here if you're willing to dig into this and apply this to your own situation here. So to wrap up this section of this course, we've talked about working for Salesforce customer companies, and working for Salesforce partner companies. And so now you're probably wondering, well, that's great. There's all these companies, there's all these jobs, there's all this shortage, but where do I even begin? And so in the next section of this course, we're going to make it all about helping you make your own pivot into the cloud and launching your own Salesforce career. And we're going to look at such topics as how you can embrace your past in order to transform your future, and figure out where you're heading by looking at where you've been and where Salesforce is heading as well, so that you can find and chart your own path into the cloud using Salesforce as the vehicle to get you there. All right, so let's get more specific now with how you can make your own pivot into the cloud if you are looking for a career change, or if you're just starting out or just fresh out of high school or college and looking to launch a career in the cloud and leveraging Salesforce as the vehicle to get you there. Then here's some of the different paths that you can take, and this source is from Trailhead, and that's a Salesforce resource where you can get hands-on experience and further training as well. We'll discuss Trailhead, and I'll show you how to get signed up for a Trailhead account later. But here is the actual path for that. I'll link to this as well in the resource section. Now, Salesforce on their own Trailhead website, they mentioned 6 specific paths. There's more than 6 here, but I wanted to show you that some of the ones that get some of the most attention that I call the usual suspects are that of administrator, developer, and technical architect. And these are average salary ranges. These are US dollars represented. And these are pretty accurate as far as from my own experience of what I've seen out there and being familiar with what people are getting out there in the marketplace. Some of the other roles that I'm seeing more and more traction in would be around business analyst roles. I've got a large Facebook group of over 5,000 students, and a good percentage of those individuals are business analysts that are needing to not start a business analyst career, but enhance or improve their career outlook by learning a new skill, which is Salesforce, because they're inside of a company or inside of a software project that is built on the Salesforce platform and they don't have Salesforce background. So as you see here at the time of this recording, 104K, that's about a $10,000 a year premium over the average business analyst salary. And you'll find as well, and I'll look later on in this, some of the other paths that, for example, project managers that acquire Salesforce skills, that provides them with a good premium as well. And then additionally, marketing managers and sales managers. But then beyond these paths, the average salary for those that just state basic Salesforce skills, this would be for like end users and not even administrators or developers or business analysts, etc. The average pay is $70,000 a year, which is well above the average salary of jobs in the US currently. So it's definitely makes you very marketable and can increase your salary very quickly. I know when I started out as a Salesforce developer, I actually made more than this with my first Salesforce job, and I doubled my salary as far as what I was making as a technical writer previously. And so some of these paths here, and the idea behind this section of this course is to help you identify what the options are and start to figure out, based on your own self-assessment, what is the right path for you. Now, Salesforce Administrator, the average salary, the $95,000, here's numbers that Salesforce has provided from Trailhead as far as the number of jobs in the last 12 months, the annual growth rate, and then as well the percent that are entry-level roles. And so some types of positions are more entry level, and administrator roles tend to be more entry level. And as well, as far as administrative jobs, you tend to be on site and in the office more and not working remotely. And administrative jobs have to do with day-to-day operational procedures such as provisioning user accounts, creating reports and dashboards, setting security, and just the day-to-day operational work in the system. And then as well, Salesforce developers, those tend to be less entry level. There's a great growth rate there, a lot of jobs in the past 12 months. Average salary is well into the six figures. And then as well, if you're looking to work remotely, then a developer path may make more sense for you, because developers tend to have to endure less meetings than administrators, and you usually want your developers, since they do command such a high salary, you want them writing code and creating applications. Now, there is an entry point into the developer path. That's through the Platform App Builder certification, and you can go down the beginning path of becoming a developer by learning what you can do on the platform with clicks instead of code. And I do recommend that people learn how to do things declaratively or clicks instead of code before resorting to code. But the Salesforce developer path is a great one with a lot of jobs there that are well paying. Next is the Salesforce Technical Architect, and I've used a unicorn here because those individuals are so rare. Now, there was a Salesforce employee at that user group that I gave this presentation to, and I asked the employee how many technical architects, certified technical architects, are there in the world. He couldn't share an official number, but he did confirm that it's less than 300 technical architects in the entire world. Now, we'll go a little more into the path for the technical architects here momentarily, but the average salary is $150,000. I've seen some numbers reporting $200,000 or more, and that there's a lot of jobs there. You can tell there's 8,362 jobs in the last 12 months, but there's only less than 300 people that are certified technical architects. There's an annual growth rate that's really large, and there's no entry-level roles. You have to have experience to be a technical architect. So here is the path for the technical architect journey. I'm not going to go into all this, but I will make this available via download, these different slides and links. And so you see here the optional foundation. I do recommend that almost everyone go through the administrator certification to learn the fundamentals of the platform, even if you do want to become a developer. Now, I did mention the App Builder certification previously, and that is in this path here that goes up to the Certified Application Architect. On either side of these two paths, you have also the Platform Developer 1, and it's there that you will have to do some coding if you do want to ultimately become either a Certified System Architect or a Certified Application Architect. Now, once you've attained both of these designations, which means that you've attained the specialization certifications below the sides of the pyramid here. So for example, once you've acquired all the certifications here on the left, you have the designation of a certified application architect. You could couple that with all of the specialization certifications here on the right and attain the certified system architect designation. And then you've got the prerequisites needed to go for the certified technical architect. If you notice these double asterisks here, it says that the credentials earned upon successful completion of the domain architect tier and a review board. So you do have to present before a review board and be judged based on your solution that you provide. And also trying to attain this certification costs several $1,000s. So it's not for the faint of heart or the inexperienced. It's a very arduous process, but I wanted to at least mention that as an option for those of you that aspire to reach the pinnacle, the rarest of certification designations. Now we're getting into the consultant path, and that's what I was speaking about earlier, where partner companies can really score a lot of points in this space, and you see a lot of jobs in the last 12 months. A pretty steady growth rate, and a fair amount that are entry-level roles and approaching six-figure average salary as well. I feel like that number is a little low, and especially if you've got some experience, you should be able to get into six figures as a consultant fairly readily. Other paths available: Salesforce Business Analyst, 104,000 average salary, and about a quarter of these are entry-level roles, good growth rate, and good number of jobs. As I mentioned previously, I'm seeing more and more business analysts come into my universe looking to learn Salesforce. And then as well, sales managers, I mentioned previously, where I was at a car dealership and they were taking my information down into Salesforce, and that was their customer relationship management platform. And so a sales manager would be someone inside of a company such as a car dealership that is managing salespeople and using Salesforce. Here's the average salary. You see the numbers there as well. And so the main idea here is to just show you that it's more than just admin, developer, or technical architect. You can look for jobs in a whole host of paths, and sometimes you have to take a job down one path in order to build up experience and build your resume in order to head down your ultimate path. You may not be able to become a consultant overnight or developer overnight or even administrator overnight, but you may get some job that calls for you to be a Salesforce user in some capacity. So here's a marketing manager path and a Salesforce project manager. And I mentioned previously the premium, that once you add Salesforce onto your job title, it means a five-figure premium as far as adding close to $10,000 or more a year in your annual salary because you know Salesforce. So the first order of business is you need to create your own Salesforce developer account. Now, you may be watching this lecture as part of one of my certification courses, new user courses, workshops, or boot camps. Regardless of whatever I teach, one of the first lectures that I always do is how to sign up for a free account. Now, don't let the word developer scare you off if you're a non-coder. It doesn't matter if you're a developer, administrator, consultant, or if you're not even sure of what your path is on the Salesforce platform quite yet. Salesforce provides a free developer edition of Salesforce so that you can learn on their platform. And so you just simply go to developer.salesforce.com/signup and fill out the form. It's very simple. You just enter in your first and last name, your email address, select a role from the drop down here, and it really doesn't matter what you select. It won't affect the addition of the free developer account that you receive. This just helps Salesforce segment you into one of multiple lists that they may have so that they can market to you and also to provide you with their own educational content based on what your desired path is. And so just make a selection in the role. And then for your company, just enter in a company name. I put the path here to the sign up page just to really highlight this more. This is the page that we're on, is developer.salesforce.com/signup. But you can just put your own name here for the company name. I'm putting mine here, or I probably should put my company name depending on where you might be watching this. So put in either your name or the company name that you want to be associated with. And also bear in mind, if you're learning Salesforce and you're working for a company, you may want to use an email address that's a personal email address so that if you change employment, you don't lose your free developer account. You want an active email that you will always have access to. Now for your username here at the bottom of this form, it's important that the username be unique across all Salesforce platforms in existence. So if you already have one or multiple Salesforce accounts, you can't just enter in your email address again. It needs to be something that's unique. And so what I tend to do is put a dot and then I give some sort of descriptive phrase here on the end to tell me or remind me of what this particular account is for. Now, the username does need to be in the form of an email address. So if you're brand new to Salesforce and you've never had an account on the platform before, you can go ahead and just enter your email address here and that will work fine for your username. But for those of you that have already had accounts on the Salesforce platform, then go ahead and put a dot and then fill in the blanks as far as what will help you remember what this is about. So for example, if you're a member of my bootcamp, you would do .bootcamp. If you're going through in one of my workshops, you can put workshop here. If you're learning about artificial intelligence.ai, you get the point, hopefully. So check the checkbox and then click sign me up. That will take you to a landing page where they are asking you to confirm your enrollment into the platform and checking your account. So check your email and you will receive an email from Salesforce where you simply click through the email to confirm your account. That will take you to a page where you set your password. It's very important that you set your password and that you remember what your password is, and they will also provide you in that email with where you go to log in, and that is login.salesforce.com. So just watch for that email, confirm your account, set your password, and then be sure that you don't lose that password.